I know right now it's not at Murphy County, it's not in Murphy, but what is the state going to do to help protect some of the historical landmarks around Murphy and Silver City, and also some of the trailheads that have been burned?
Well, you're way ahead of us right now. Obviously, we don't like to lose any of those assets, but we got to get the fire out first. And then we'll have to go back and take a look, see how much damage is done and what we'll have to do to repair it. But I can tell you this, in past experiences, and the Murphy complex is probably the largest past experience I have, which was in '07, over 700,000 acres. We got a lot of help with that. We got a lot of help from some of the federal agencies. Our state folks stepped up and we rehabbed that pretty fast. And then fortunately, we had a lot of the service clubs step up and help us with rehabbing some of the trailheads. And you know, if it's an antiquity, if it's under the antiquities, once you've lost it, you've lost it. So we got to get the fire out first.
How is the state going to help with that, getting the fire out? Is there any
How's what?
resources that the state is going to put into helping the fire at this point?
Well, we have had state agencies, the Idaho Department of Lands, other agencies, wherever we were called for help. We tried to provide that. But I've just told the county commissioner that as of right now, you got a disaster declaration for Owyhee County.
So there is.
As of right now.
Yeah.
That's right.
Do you feel like if the fire spreads, you're going to need to call with evacuations to Murphy and places like that?
Well, you know, I don't know. That'll be up to the incident commander and the sheriff. The sheriff's, obviously, we don't want to we don't want to run people out of their homes. But on the other hand, we got to fight a fire, and we got firefighters out here, and we don't want to turn them into rescue operators. So I'm just asking the folks, if they ask you to evacuate, if they ask you to leave, get the hell out. Because our human safety is the very first thing, whether it's a bystander or whether it's a firefighter themselves. And we need to fight the fire. These guys are trained to fight fires. And we don't need to end up in a bunch of rescue operations. So if they ask you to evacuate, they're not doing that lightly. They don't want to chase anybody out of their home. And so do it, please. I just came from northern Idaho. We were up there in Kamiah on the fire up there, and we've had a lot of evacuations, and we've lost a lot of structures. And we're not even close to estimating any kind of control that we have over that. So they wouldn't even say 5%. They wouldn't say 2%. Wouldn't say anything. All they'd say is it continues to grow. And it's a tough, tough fire. A lot of Orfino. We had a big blow up in Orfino last night. And so we got another, I think we got one more type 1 team coming in.
Yes, sir.
But the assets in the Pacific Northwest and in the Great Basin are stretched. You know, Northern California, northwestern Nevada, Oregon, Washington are all on fire. And they got big fires that are threatening human life and also threatening structures. That's our first priority. Gotta be.
I mean, obviously this has been very detrimental to the economy of Hawaii. I mean, you could be talking, you know, even of the trailheads up in the Hawaii fronts, let alone all of the land that they use for cattle there. Is there anything that the state plans to do? I know you did a disaster declaration. You know, what will that do for all of those farms?
Well, it will give some economic relief and economic opportunity to the county. But I don't make those declarations until the county asks. I'm not going to run over the county commissioners. They know when they need help, and they know when they need a declaration. So as soon as that declaration is asked for, they're going to get it. And so, yeah, we'll do what we can. You know, this isn't our first major fire like this. I go back to the Murphy fire. That was huge, and it destroyed. Obviously, Another one of the priorities we've got is habitat. Because we got a grouse designation coming at us, the greater sage coming at us, and it's their habitat. It's sagebrush and it's the upland plains. So, I hope we've been doing everything we possibly can to keep from listing that, because then that changes the management and the characterizations of a lot of our economy, because it changes the habitat, multiple use of the habitat itself. So protecting this for habitat alone is terribly important to our economy.
You said, you've helped, there's a lot of farms losing cows and losing their livelihood, and a lot of ranchers that are facing great loss. And you said in the past, you've seen stuff like this with the Murphy Fire. What did you do then, and is that something you're willing to do again for the farmers who've lost
Whatever we can do within our ability to do it, we're going to do it. There was some cases where during the Murphy Fire there was some substantial losses, and the Department of Ag, along with the U.S. Department of Ag, they also have some tools that they can use. And so what exactly those are right now, I don't know. We want to get the fire out first. That it?
I was going to ask about, did you think there's any need to use the National Guard at all?
If I were requested, and if General Ritchie were to indicate that request was warranted, we have in the past. If you'll recall, on the Castle Rock fire in Greenhorn Gulch, Sun Valley, because of the structures, and when we asked people to evacuate, and we evacuated about 1,500 people, as I recall, up there, didn't we, General? Something like that. When we asked people to evacuate, we want them to leave their doors open, unlocked, not open, unlocked, so that if there is a structural fire, we can fight it, and without having to break down the door. And so we deployed, I think it was 80, maybe even up to 100 for not only traffic control, but also for security, because some of these folks that follow fires also know that there's a lootable possibility if that's a word. I'm starting to sound like George Bush. Make up my own words. There's an opportunity for mischief, and if that's requested by the sheriff, I asked that very question when we were in northern Idaho, in Camion, where they had some evacuations, or Pheno, where they may have some, Pierce, where they may have some, and that was my question to them, because I want to be able to go back to the tag, to the adjutant general, and say we may need some support here, but that's going to have to come from General Ritchie.
And why did the state take until today, Saturday, to make the disaster declaration?
I'm not going to run over the county commissioners. I got to hear from the county commissioners. Number one, I got to hear from them first, and number two, we have to know that they're spending money. When we know that they're spending money and they're extending credit or something like that, then we can make the disaster declaration. But
you didn't know that until today?
I didn't. Well, we didn't confirm it till today. Better said. All right?
I guess, Governor, last question, a little lighter note. What do you think about all, obviously the amount of work and everything that the firefighters have done?
I every time I get a little down on the cooperation that we get out of the federal government sometimes, it's incidents like this that said, why can't the rest of the federal government act like these federal agencies? Why can't the rest of regional government cooperate and act like these? They got one mission in mind, and that mission in mind is to at least make life better than what it is when we're going through these incidences. And so, whether it was up on that big fire in northern Idaho or this one, when you see people acting like neighbors, and neighbor helping neighbor, and agency helping agency, and everybody at the same one purpose in mind, and that is to put the fire out. Stop the damage, stop the harm. So that's probably, you hate to see an incident like this in order to witness that kind of cooperation. But it's very reassuring to know that we can do it. We can do it in a crisis. Why can't we do it every day? All right.
Sorry, to interject one more if you don't mind. Just could you kind of, I always think about what's next. So the next step for you guys in the state is just continuing to control this fire as much as possible. Like basically the next step.
The next step? Well, when we got all the hot spots out, when the mopping up is done, in fact, I would probably tell you right now in an office someplace, even though it's Saturday, there are probably rehab planning going on right now. Where can we get the seed? Where can we get the native seed? Do we have the kind of sagebrush starts that we're going to have? I remember in going through the Murphy fire, we had that thing rehabbed in nothing flat, but there was some extraordinary things that we had to do, but I think we set a precedent for it. For instance, we didn't have the native seed, the grass seed. I think Utah had a bunch, but they wanted to keep it for their own fire, some of it for their own fire. So we got some from them. Then we had to mix non-native seed with it, and we got sued. We had to go to court. But I think we deployed 140 drills to replant that Murphy complex. We motivated about 1,000 Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and FFA, 4-H kids to go out and collect sagebrush seed that fall. And I think as I recall the figures, we brought in about 3,500 pounds of rough seed. The Forest Service cleaned it, and we ended up with about 400 pounds. Now all that seed is becoming, has been planted.
Hopefully isn't burning again. So hopefully isn't burning.
No, but I'm reminded, my granddad and my dad had beat me with a hauler if they saw me planting sagebrush. They spent so many years taking it out so that they could farm, so that they could ranch. But no, I would tell you right now, the next step is as the fire is still smoldering, there'll be people planning on what we've got to do in order to get back in there, because maybe not so much out here in terms of erosion and in terms of runoff problems that we're going to have, but the quality of our water in Idaho, every mountain is a watershed. Every one of it. And a lot of that water goes for human consumption, and it goes for a use. And so the quicker we can stabilize that burnt surface, the better off we're going to be. The Lieutenant Governor was telling me that those sagebrush roots are burning, and it actually calcines the earth. And so it burns all the nutrients out of it. And so somehow you got to get that. You can plant something in there, but it's like planting something in a jar of marbles. There's no nutrients. The nutrients have all been burnt out. So it's going to take some effort, maybe some tillage.
Thank you.
All right. Thank